Greetings, it is I, Tantus now Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time to continue my discussion on the forgotten collectible card games of old. Collectible card games, then, most of which have kind of died out mostly. Let's continue where we left off with Vampire the Eternal Struggle, the collectible card game set in the World of Darkness role-playing game world. Let's continue where we left off. We talked about crypt cards. Let's talk about library cards. There are four main types of library cards: conviction cards, master cards, minion cards, and event cards. Conviction cards are played when you'd be during your phase of your turn where you're untapping. Master cards are played by the Methuselah, i.e. you as the player. Minion cards are basically played in association with one of your minions, while event cards are played during the discard portion of your turn. Event cards represent major changes to the total World of Darkness, the entire world. Now, Master cards have no attribute at the top to mark off that they are a Master card. All the others are going to have an icon indicating the type of card that they are. Once you play a card, the person that played it has to effectively tell everyone what the card does. They have to inform everybody of it. They put it out in front of them. After they were done, after it's complete, it would go to the discard/ash heap after it's completed whatever it does, unless it specifically would stay out and play. Now, there are some cards that are played as it's played. Basically, they have an effect that comes into play when it's played. These as it's played cards can be countered effectively by another card, or can be basically followed up by with a small period of time where you can play as it's played cards in response to the plan that's being played. After everything is said and done is when you would draw the replacement cards to this, after this sort of time period is ended. Now let's talk about drawing cards. Whenever you play a library card from your hand, you draw the replacement from your actual library. So you should always have a number of cards equal to your hand, equal to your hand size. Now this isn't to say that your hand size can't change. Things can alter your hand size, but as long as whatever your hand size is, that's the amount of cards you could have in it. If you run out of cards in your library, well, then you're fine. It doesn't matter anymore. You can't replace it. You keep going in the game. You just don't have any more library cards. Now, should you ever count your hand and you have a different number than than your hand size, then you should either discard down to or draw up to the appropriate number of library cards in your hand. Now, there are requirements to play many cards. The left strip of a library card, will first tell you the type of card it is, of course, except if it's a master card, it doesn't have a symbol, but will also tell you the clans and disciplines that might be required, or any other kind of requirements that you might need. Some cards do put requirements in the text box, so you do have to read if there's something special, different than the normal requirements that you'd need. If you're a minion, if your minion would be playing this minion card, then it has to meet the requirements. If you're a Methuselah, then you have to have an active minion that meets the requirements in order for you to play. So there is always something that has to have these requirements open in order for you to play these cards. Now, if a card has a burn symbol, should you not have a minion that matches the requirements of this card, you are allowed to discard a card in replace of those requirements in order to play this library card. You can only burn a card like this. I discard a card once a turn like this. You can only activate this burn effect once a turn. It might have a red blood droplet with a number in it. This means you actually either have to use blood from one of your minions or from your pool in order to use this card. If it's a white diamond with a skull in it and a number, then you actually have to use your pool to pay for this card. Effectively pay blood to this, burn it into the blood bank in order to pay for this card. The red ones is optional. When a card is played, the person that's playing it chooses whatever appropriate targets that affects. If it mentions you should be targeting something, it will let you know what kind of targets it is, and then you, who is playing it, or whatever is playing it, will choose those targets. If something is in a Topor region, it's a fine legal target. But if it is uncontrolled or contested, it is not a legal target for something that would target it. Now, let's talk order, because order is very important. Order of cards that are being played, the order always goes to the Methuselah whose turn it is. So effectively, if it is my turn and I play cards, I get the priority. I'm allowed to play cards and then play basically my response effects, my response cards to that card. After I am done, the next Methuselah counterclockwise around the board can keep playing cards. Whenever someone else plays a card, I am allowed to, because it is my turn, to play a response to their cards even. So we can have that I play something. I might play something to enhance that. My opponent might play something on that. I may play something to counteract what he played. And then we go down each of the opponents and they keep playing things to whatever I played to build up this basically pile of cards. They would go into a sequence starting with what I played, going in order from that. So we continually go down this sequence. And as I said, I can play cards in response to basically undo the other players because I am the controlling player. Now, some cards might have a special gray draft block on them. Gray draft box on them that give a special effect if you are drafting this, which means if you're playing a sealed draft tournament or a sealed deck tournament, something like that, where you'd be building a deck or drafting a deck in the middle before you would play a tournament. Then these abilities are appropriate to the game. This does not change clan or discipline or blood requirements. It only adds to these cards only if you're playing draft. If you're not drafting, then you're pretty much going to be ignoring the gray boxes. Now I'm going to talk about MasterCards. There are two types of MasterCards: regular MasterCards and out-of-turn MasterCards. Regular MasterCards continually divide into discipline cards and location cards, which I'm going to go over more. You can play a MasterCard during your Master phase, and only one MasterCard during a turn. If I play an out-of-turn MasterCard, I effectively am borrowing my master card that I could play from my next master turn. So I will be giving up the ability to play another master card on my next master phase, but I get this out of turn master card on another opponent's turn that I'm effectively playing it then. The Methuselah that plays a master card is in control of the master card, even if I should put it on another Methuselah's card. So even if I play something positive on someone else, it's still a card I control. Let's dive into each of these different types of MasterCards. Locations. These represent a location that the Methuselah and their minions controls. You basically have control of it. You can use its ability repeatedly as it is appropriate on your turns. This doesn't say it can't go away. There are cards which will basically remove it from play and put it in the ash heap. But normally it stays out in play, and you can continue using the effects of this location as long as it's there. A discipline card is something that you play from your hand on a vampire you control. So you're playing it on a vampire, one you control, to give it an additional level of a discipline. Now, this can either be the basic level of a discipline if it didn't have that discipline before, or the superior rank of that discipline if it already had it, but you're basically giving an upgrade to one of your vampires. It will also give them +1 capacity to their total amount of blood they can have. It will not give them that extra blood, it just increases the capacity of blood they can have by 1. A trophy is a card that you're going to put into play during your master phase. This card has no effect until it is moved on to a vampire. You cannot move it into a vampire until certain conditions are met. Either a red list minion has to be defeated, or a D-circle action has to be doing, like something like Diablerie, which has to be affected. Once this is resolved, you can move any number of trophies you can control to this vampire if you choose to. Again, it doesn't have to just be one trophy if you have more than one trophy, but you would put all the ones that you choose to this one vampire that has qualified for it. Once you associate a trophy with that vampire, it does not change. It has that trophy permanently attached to it. You can't give it to someone else. You can't reward it to someone else. You've already given it as a reward. Now, of course, the out-of-turn master card you would play on an opponent's turn. The card itself will tell you when it is appropriate to play on that opponent's turn. So if a triggering of time period on an opponent's turn occurs, you can then play it. Now, again, this counts as your master card that you'll be playing on your turn. You're basically borrowing that master card that you'll be playing on your turn and playing it now. In this way, you cannot play more than one out-of-turn master card on any given turn. You cannot play a second out-of-turn master card before you have a master phase. And you cannot play an out-of-turn master card on your own turn. So it has to be on an opponent's turn. Now, there are some cards that are identified as trifles. When you play a trifle, you basically get an additional master phase action. So I can play an additional master library card on my master phase then. Now, if I use an out of turn master card that's a trifle, this means that on my next master phase, I get a master card that I could play during that time. You cannot get more than one bonus trifle in a turn. That means even if you play more than one trifle card, you only get effectively one bonus action you can do in this way. You still have the same restrictions on out of turn cards. You can only play one before your next master phase anyway. Effectively, it means you get that bonus there, or you can play a trifle card and get a second one on your turn. Those are the two options for this. No more than that. Now, there are additional other types of master cards which are more minor. They don't show up as much. The descriptions on the card will tell you what effects they have and how they work. It is assumed, unless the card specifically says when a master card is played, after it's finished up whatever event or activity or effect it has, it is put into the discard. The exception, of course, would be if it's saying specifically put into play or play on another card. So that's it for today. I introduced you to the basics of the library. I talked about the different types of library card. I talked about drawing cards from the library card. I went over the very basics of it. Then I talked about master cards. What are the major types of cards you're going to have? I talked about the different types of master cards, when it's appropriate to play these master cards, giving you all the information you need to know about, of course, master cards. In the next episode, I'm going to dive into the rest of the types of library cards and let you know about minion cards and event cards. Because once you know how all these cards basically work, you've taken the first big step into playing this game. But regardless, if you have any questions, comments, anything you would say, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. It shows support the channel, the empire, the work I do. If you want to show some extra support, you can always check out my Patreon. Link in the description below. But regardless, until the next time, I bid you farewell.